Hey everyone, Steve here. Before we dive in, quick heads up. This episode survived a full blown Black Friday meltdown. But you know us, we hit the big red button anyway. So tonight, Cynthia and J-Mack are going to take the wheel while Jodi's off conquering Chicago. And despite the chaos, it turned into a pretty funny and unexpectedly insightful episode, if you ask me. Alright, glitches aside, vibes restored, let's get into round 24.
Hey,
I don't
guess
know.
what? Too
What?
much food, too much family, and too many technical difficulties
I'm
on
just
this post-Thanksgiving Black, meaning so many things,
so
Black
many things.
Friday,
Dark,
Black
like
technology, Black
black
hole,
clothes.
all of it. We're in mourning due to our technical difficulties and for the loss of our, normal host, which creates all kinds of chaos when
She's
she's
still
not with us.
alive.
Well,
We
she's still
might.
alive, absolutely. But the loss in the technical connectivity realm, that's what creates the mourning. And I can assure you, we are live on Facebook. We are 11 minutes overdue, but we are here. Cynthia Brewer and I, we made it happen, and it is okay because we are live and we're making it happen, babe.
Don't you wish that Jen was at like every event in your life, just giving you positive feedback? Worst case scenario, we record this on live and then just post it after the fact and pretend we were live. But we'll do the show. We're going to record it because we have some good content. Jodi is perfectly fine. She's not missing. She's in Chicago, Chi-Town, Chirac, whatever you want to call it. She is jet setting to another part of the country and she will be back. I don't know if it's next week or the week after. I've got Jen Makris with me, J-Mack, as I affectionately refer to her, the founder of Cannabis Cash Consultants. She is, I know. So tell me about our featured business of the month for the month of November, because we just barely squeezed your event in, did we?
We did. And listen, I'm happy to be here once again. And it's gonna have to be the trifecta, Cynthia, because this is the second time I've had the privilege of being your co-host. The
Yes,
second
you're a
time.
repeat guest
I'm
now.
a repeat guest. And I feel like every time there's some sort of technical glitch that prevents us from being that one solid unit that we are together. And we're going to get it right one of these days. So I thank you for your grace. I thank you for your forgiveness. I thank you for your patience. I
I'm
don't
not
know what
mad
I
at
would
you.
do without you, Cynthia. And
Not
and
even mad.
and so, we're here today. I'm so excited to again be your guest again, and to really take the reins and provide our listeners and our guests, some good content on this post Thanksgiving Black Friday, which means a whole bunch of things as it relates to today.
Right.
So enough about that, and more about me, right?
Yes.
So Cannabis Cash Consultants is my company, and I have the profound
Frozen.
with
How did we had you frozen for a second?
legalized in the state of Florida. I was working with financial institutions that were ready to bank these CRB, right? These cannabis related businesses. And I'm all about supplying safe and secure access and safe and secure movement of the physical cash within the four walls of the dispensary. And so when I was working with financial institutions that were ready to bank those operators, the the larger armored transportation providers, those armored trucks that you
Yep.
see on the road today, would not move that cannabis cash and still today cannot. And no is not an answer for my customers. So I went and I sought out reputable and insured, hopefully they're insured, right?
What are you gonna do?
Transportation providers that would move cannabis cash from point A to point B. But more importantly, once that cannabis cash was on site, how are the staff and the managers trained and positioned to physically touch the cash that is on premise? We want to prevent this, the exposure and the theft and the risk of cash, because next to the people and the product, the cash is the most expensive and riskiest thing in that business. So I found that specialized and niche lane that I get to go and I get to, consult and teach and advise people on how to really manage the physical touch points in the cash process. And that's how Cannabis Cash Consultants was born. And
Mhm.
being that it started in the state of Florida, again, I've had the privilege of taking this nationwide to all legalized markets. And I do want to say a caveat to that is, yes, cannabis cash consultants, but we are not cannabis specific, right?
Right.
Anybody that is, and we'll speak to this a little bit later, but when we were at our regional ambassador weeks, right, really what that opened up, because any cash intensive business presents the same set of challenges as we have here in cannabis.
And you see a lot of retailers, not just in the cannabis space. Cannabis space has no other choice but to utilize a lot of cash or like new technology like AeroPay and CanPay and things like that that maybe may not be super comfortable because they don't have the ability to use merchant processing like other companies. But you also see people straying away from those fees, and myself included, because if I take, not from the laboratory, everything in the laboratory is either check, coming in. That's the best, safest way for us. We never take cash. But for like the t-shirt company for Black Top and Brewer, like I don't want to pay 3% to take a credit card. So I encourage people to like transfer in some other method. How much money would you say, this is my curiosity, how much cash do you think a random, just everyday MSO pulls through in a day?
Ooh, volume. So I will say it's about 70-30 cash to digital transaction.
Okay.
And it depends on the market in which that MMTC is located. I will say in more rural areas, the amount of cash is probably 5 to 8x what that would be in a more urban area.
Yeah.
Because
that would make sense.
Right. Maybe there's some unbanked people. I will say a lot of the migrant workers, they transact a lot in cash. I would say a lot of the, again, urban that are unbanked, rural areas that are unbanked, they're transacting more in cash. So, an average dispenser, an average MMTC is probably pulling in, I would say, upwards of, and it's probably not, they probably don't want me to say this out there, right? Because
it's generic
security, right? But, I would, and for me, you want to have a baseline. So it's not worth me coming in if you're under X amount of dollars because I want to provide you an ROI. But I would say 20 to 30K daily in cash is a pretty median number. Obviously, some are far above that threshold, but that is definitely, I would say, an average number, 30K, 35K in cash on a sorry, maybe a weekly basis, not a daily basis, weekly basis.
Okay, so weekly yeah, obviously it's all dependent on where they are located. And it makes sense rural versus urban because I mean, most of the people I know in rural, which is a hard word to say anyways, settings don't trust a lot of banks and they bury some cash in their front yard, not gonna lie.
Yeah,
But
under the mattress, still a common practice in the backyard. That yes.
When I was a bartender in a non-rural environment, I would always have cash, and this is like a nightmare to have to swing by the bank and drop it off. It's only when you have a bill due. So I would always have massive amounts of cash, which is super unsafe, but I get what you're doing. What you provide to the industry is invaluable when there was a need that everybody was ignoring and they were like, freaking figure it out.
Figure it out.
And you figured it out.
I did. And I'm so grateful for that. Because, when I tell people I'm part of the industry, I'm non-flower touching, right?
Yeah.
But it's the other green, sticky, smelly green component to the industry that everybody realizes and touch. Yeah, absolutely. And listen, just as when you were a bartender and taking that money, whether it was home or to the bank, your life is important to me and your safety is important to me. So what mechanisms can we put in place to ensure safety? We don't want you going to the night drop at the bank at, 11 p.m. every night or sending your employee to the night drop.
I did. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, that's kind of bad, isn't it?
Oh, yeah. But you didn't know what you didn't know, right? And so that's what I love to do is I get to educate people on safer alternatives to handling cash.
That's great. Well, we also utilize your amazing skills and your networking. The fact that Jen's probably the only person I know that knows everybody. Like if you're like, oh, do you know the CEO of blah blah company? And you're like, yeah, actually we had dinner last week. Oh, yes. We were texting yesterday, during lunch break or whatever. And I'm like, you're just very well connected. You're also heading to Vegas shortly for MJBiz, which is like, the yearly, you got to travel to Mecca yearly and pay homage out there with all of the industry experts and same faces, different places, right? But it's always fun.
Well, first of all, I wish you were going because
I know,
listen,
me too.
anytime I get to hang with Cynthia Brewer is like magical.
I know,
Uh-huh.
right?
And secondly, yes, MJ BizCon is like the annual the Grammys of the industry, right? It is
Yeah.
the place where everyone comes. I will say now probably more international as well as domestic. So
Okay.
there's a big pull to Vegas, and there's always a pull to Vegas. But MJ Biz is definitely the annual event that really speaks to all facets of the industry, whether you're in cultivation, whether you're in retail. I have the absolute pleasure of speaking at, I was selected as a solo presenter, girl. So not just speaking on a panel or
It's a
doing,
big deal.
it's kind of a big deal. I'm pretty freaking stoked about it. And for those people that are really just entering the space, they
Mhm.
come to MJ Biz to really get a lot of knowledge and information about the industry and where is their entry point, or if they are already in this space, how do they navigate maybe some of the complexities that we're faced as an industry. And so being around like-minded people and being around your community really does help elevate your intel around the industry,
Mhm.
but
That's what.
also elevate your connections. And so I'm speaking in the Business 101 forum
Okay.
about how to separate yourself as a biz as a service provider to the
And
space, right?
okay,
So,
an ancillary
um,
support industry provider. So not flower touching, somebody that wants to be in the space but not touch the stuff.
mhm. And I really bring the experience of how I found my lane that we just spoke about a moment ago. Like, how
Yeah.
can I help advise other people on, hey, this is your area of expertise, or this is your experience over the last X amount of years in your professional life. How will that parlay into something that can serve the industry? And so, really, kind of opening yourself up to the opportunity and what you can use from your experiences and how will that serve the industry now. It doesn't always have to be flower touching, right? What is
Right.
are you a lighting professional? Are you a nutrients professional? Are you an ATM professional? Like, what does that look like, and how can that really, how can you stand out as a service provider? And I'm super excited to speak to that and educate people on how they can enter the space or really find their own lane in the space, because we are still pretty much a newer
Right.
industry.
Yep.
While some markets are more mature than others, West Coast markets versus East Coast markets, there is a space and there's a but for everybody. But let's just try to find the right seat for you.
Yeah, so I see it a little differently. I'm like, you really need to like explain your value before we let you come play with us in our sandbox. Because it seems like with MJ Biz, especially the beginning years or what as it became more popular, it's different providers of different services, which is great. You can see the lighting, you can see the remediation activities, you can see different types of extraction equipment and rolling papers and all these things that you could do. And then you start to see companies that never wanted to play with cannabis, never wanted to join the group, wasn't condoning the activity, wasn't supporting the industry. And they're like, how do I join? And we're like,
Right.
I don't think we're good. We're good. So I would suck at your job. And I'm so glad that you've got it under control because I have a big issue with like, you know, you didn't have to go through this shit. You didn't have to like go through all the nonsense. And then now you want to come play. However, we do need those ancillary support businesses, regardless of what I think about it, because there are shifting markets. People are coming and going. And unfortunately, it's like a revolving door with some of the most important parts of the supply chain. And so people get in trouble. People get their licenses revoked. People get suspended. They get in trouble. Their reputation gets just pummeled. And so, yes, we do have to make it available to other people that are now just starting to open up to it. But maybe I'm just sour.
Well, no, and listen, to have Cynthia Brewer's stamp of approval is really important, right? It is highly coveted. But you have a great point, though. There are competitive aspects of our industry,
Oh,
right?
yeah.
And so like packaging is one of them, right? It's a very competitive space when you're offering packaging. So how can you be versatile? How can you separate yourself from the other person that's trying to vie for the same opportunity or the same business or the same contract, same customer? So again, it's those little nuances. And you made a point a moment ago about me being connecting with many people, right? Having a vast network. That didn't happen overnight.
Of
It was
course.
putting
Yeah.
myself in those environments, and those places where those conversations were being had with the people that were making those decisions and cultivating those relationships. So I have experience on the banking side, right? I was always told that those banking decisions and those relationships with financial institutions are very, they take a lot of effort and time.
Oh yeah. I used to
Cannabis,
work at a bank
you know,
right as
who,
we were transitioning into the medical program. And I was
yeah.
like, oh, we'll just go there and they'll bank us. And they wouldn't. Even
Well,
though it was a state chartered bank, which could make the decisions on site, board of directors were on site,
yep.
but we ended up going to a bank that one of our board of directors was a president of, and it worked out great for all this still. And it's been
Yeah.
8 years. So it is about relationships. And it just takes like one. I don't think the banking industry knows for like the locally state chartered banks that are not national chartered banks. Okay. So
Yep. You got it.
that if you give them a chance, they will be incredibly loyal cannabis companies. If you decide to bank them, if you give them the opportunity, maybe put the extra risk assessment and checks and balances in place, they will be so loyal. They will sing your praises to their clients and the clients will come. That's what happened with us. And so, yeah, I'm glad that there's banks that are more open to banking the cannabis space or ancillary cannabis businesses, because we used to have to get very strategic about hiding what we did and
Yeah.
names of companies and how things were deducted out of your account by different support companies. So I think that's great that you found a way to bridge that gap, because
Sure.
that's a very difficult and that's a highly regulated industry, much like cannabis, but we don't always play in the same circles.
Exactly. And listen, there's more opportunities available now for banking than there was, when we started in 2017. So that's great. And the more people that can normalize the conversation and have those conversations, the better off we're going to be. And that's across all segments of our industry. So I will say that, just to wrap that up, is the cannabis industry and the cannabis relationships and the rapport is 10x what it was on the banking side. So
Yeah.
it took that time to really position myself as a subject matter expert, a leader in the industry. All of those things. It took time to build that reputation in the space, and I'm very, very proud of it. And it's organizations like Florida Cannabis Action Network and some of the other organizations that I'm affiliated with that helped me build that brand reputation in the space. And so for that, I'm grateful. And that parlayed into the MJBiz speaking opportunity, and look forward to seeing so many people out there. And it's fun, but it is also a very time consuming, and you're there for work. There's not a lot of play happening out there.
You picked the dope life. So like
Pretty fantastic.
you can't leave now. So what day, if people want to hear you speak and they're going to be attending MJBizCon, what day will you be speaking?
Tuesday, the 2nd at 3:15 in the Business 101 Forum, which is one of the breakout rooms at the convention center.
Okay, so Tuesday at 3:15 in the PM at the Business Center, you can listen to J-Mack talk and advise people, or maybe just watch her in action, because it is actually incredibly impressive. She's very eloquent when she speaks. I wish I could be like Jen all of the time. She always knows what to say, even if someone asks her a question that's like controversial or scandalous or like sensitive or confusing. And she's like, I've got this answer. And she nails it. I feel like you should be like a reporter or like a news anchor, like, somebody who can always come up with something under pressure. But I know you love the cannabis space. Don't leave that. But like, maybe we start cannabis
Let's
media.
do more. Yeah, we can do more.
Something that, I wanted to be the cannabis weather person. But so
Or
we've
the
got
sports girl.
well, I mean, I do, but only like some sports. Don't ask me anything about curling or like or baseball, but I'll talk NFL with anybody. But we're going to talk about just a couple of topics. We're not going to touch on. We decided as a collective, Jen and I, that today is not a hemp day, because we had hemp days and nothing's changed. So why bring it down? We're mourning in black because we're paying homage to the hemp ban, but it's nothing to talk about today. We're going to talk first lightly. It was Thanksgiving, as everyone knows, yesterday, Thanksgiving. There was an interesting topic that was brought up about the gradually more acceptable Thanksgiving cousins walk. Are you familiar?
I am not. The cousins walk. Tell me more.
So it's a a politely eloquent way of explaining how a group of people meet once a year, family members once a year, to get high before Thanksgiving or a holiday. So this is an activity my family has participated in many times, not on purpose, but because we were horrible kids. But the cousins walk is just a very appropriate term for, you see your family that you don't see that often. It's usually before a meal, and you guys like sneak away together to go get high and
to go get ice or a safety meeting.
Right. Something like that. So I've done this before. It was not Thanksgiving, it was Christmas Eve, and I got in a lot of trouble. So it was the very first time I ever got high. Very first time. I was 16 years old, and I was in Oceanside, California, and I was at my aunt's house, who was hosting Christmas, and everybody was over there, and everyone was making food. And so my cousin, it was just a fluke that it was my cousin. She was like, "You want to go get high?" And I was like, "Why not? This is kind of a boring party. I can't drink." And so me and my sister, we went out to this very appropriately tiny Toyota Camry, and I sat in the back seat with an inflatable exercise ball in my lap, and it was crowded, and we proceeded to pass around what I could only assume was a Reggie filled joint, and got completely just blazed out of my mind and thought, okay, well, I've had enough of this, so I'm going to go inside. And I just assumed like a smoke chain similar to that like little character on Charlie Brown. Like Pigpen, that like,
yep.
Yeah, okay. I assume that's what I look like as I very cautiously re-entered the house and went straight to the bathroom in the downstairs, took a Bed Bath and Beyond or a Bath and Body Works candle and tried to waft it over my body to eliminate the cannabis smell and cover it with warm vanilla sugar, because I thought that was a thing, only to open the bathroom door to my mom standing right there saying, "Did you just get high in the bathroom?" And I was like, "No, I got high in the Camry." And all of us had to sit there in the living room next to the tree and talk about how we ruined Christmas.
Oh, well,
yes.
Wah, wah, bah humbug. But no, you actually elevated your Christmas experience. Let's be honest.
All of us got in a lot of trouble. And then all of the food looked way more delicious after the activity. But that was the first time I got high. I just didn't know there was a term called the Cousins Walk that other people were doing. I thought that was just like a family story that we joke about nowadays, now that we're all grown up.
Well, since we're talking about the first time we partook in cannabis, we should actually call it the sister walk, because my sister was the first one that introduced me to, and let's be honest, in our more mature days, we refer to it as cannabis, but the weed, right? Yeah. We got some weed, we got some pot, and my sister was, a regular consumer of, and I was in 8th grade, so I must have been like 13, 14.
Yeah, you're pretty young.
Yeah, I was young. I was definitely in 8th grade, and it was a Kentucky Derby, the eve before Kentucky Derby, and she was getting our house ready, and I was staying the night, and we got high for the first time, and she handed me a broom and told me to clean.
And
oh, now I can't clean without being stoned. Like it is, I'm a productive consumer of all the things, and especially cannabis. I love getting in the zone and just doing a deep clean stoned. It is the best, right? It takes the, I don't want to do that away. So my sister, Joanna, I love you, and you're part of my cannabis journey. You're part of my story. You're my origin story.
Yes.
But the fact that she told me like Cinderella, like, here you go, evil stepsister, just start cleaning.
Yeah.
You bet your bottom dollar. That's what I did. And we had a fantastic, and then the second time was the next day at the Kentucky Derby party with all of her nurse friends, and got stoned for the second time. And I've always been, just now, because I think that's how it was introduced, just a productive consumer of, and I like to go and do things, and it does, and it enhances my experience of all the things. And when it relates to the holidays, of course, I consumed a gummy before going to see all the family yesterday. And I may have handed my mom a half of a gummy too, just to take the edge off. Yeah. And the food tastes better, right? The edge is off of all the anxiety of being around all the family. The food it taste better. You might unfortunately be able to eat a little bit more too, and then you get the stuff feeling, and then you go
You
for a
hate
walk
yourself.
and
Yeah.
you do hate yourself. But I definitely feel like it should be called the sister walk. And when I saw the cousin walk on game day the other day, so going back to sports, it was just, a bunch of people getting around and eating like the appetizers. And I had no idea it was related to their, to going and, hey, let's go get high in the car. But I
I
love
think
that. And I
I
think
think
everybody
it's a
does it.
mainstream, it's becoming more mainstream as a tradition that was usually unspoken, and maybe just different families conducted it maybe
Yeah.
in different ways. But I did do some Thanksgiving family consuming cannabis math earlier, and
Yeah.
50% of the guests at Thanksgiving yesterday were either actively consuming or big enthusiasts for cannabis.
Yes.
And I did math for previous years and realized the numbers are strategically going up in our family. And so we are look forward facing
Yeah.
cannabis loving family.
So
So
what you're saying is next year, your Thanksgiving dinner actually may have some infused dishes.
yes,
Love
yes.
that. Love
If
that.
I don't have to tell my family, it'll be a
Sure.
better situation because I'm
Mm.
going to enjoy myself more when
Well,
they realize after the fact. But
100%. Well, we could talk about the legalities of that later, but some
medium
infused
to moderately,
oils or some infused something to cook with the butter,
barely legal. We're talking barely legal here.
fairly legal. But I feel like, and Josephine was actually just commenting. So hi, Josephine, and hi to everybody watching and commenting. We are definitely breaking the stigma, right? And we're making those conversations around the dinner table, the holiday table, more enjoyable.
We did talk about weed, yeah.
We're elevating them, right? And because we're in the industry, we are be able to break down that stigma with our family. And those are the people that our siblings were, the DARE era, and our parents were I mean, my dad went to Woodstock, and he was like, no, Jennifer, I will not consume that cannabis. Well, I'd rather you consume this than those statin drugs and those pain pills and all those other things
Right.
that can help you be more, that this can be help you be more functional around the table than a comatose, on all of your statin and all of those prescription drugs. And I will say the other conversation around the Thanksgiving table was how many people were drinking less alcohol
Right.
and that are using alternatives such as cannabis. And that was music to my ears. I don't know if that was the same for you and in the conversations you were having, but
It's
less alcohol consumption, more herbal consumption. I'm here for it.
it is weird because like I said, I used to be a bartender. So the tradition at Thanksgiving and Christmas was I would make custom cocktails, something I found online, and everybody I would do all of the things, like light something on fire. But that was the thing. I was always the family bartender, and I would just make their drinks and they would drink their drinks, and then everyone would get loshed. And then Christmas level expert.
Do it
But
again.
yeah, now it's a very different shift. It is maybe specific to the guests that were there yesterday as being they weren't all family. Some of them were friends, some of them were neighbors. It was a very eclectic mix of people. And I did the math and I was like, at least 50% for sure that definitely are enthusiasts for cannabis. So I think those numbers are great because if I think about previous holidays like Christmas last year, it was 50%. Yeah. So I'm hoping to get that family number higher and higher to where 100% of the holidays are cannabis infused.
Well,
Yeah.
being that we're in the state of Florida, let's just go for the super majority number first, right?
We do need a super
We
majority
need a
for
super
anything
majority.
to get
And then
passed.
once we exceed 57%, no, and then yeah, we'll be good to
Yes. And I'm not going to just cheat and invite like stoners to Christmas. Like they have to be authentic. But speaking of super majority,
tell me.
we have a story.
Okay.
So obviously, and this segue is very, it's adequate, I think. So smart and safe, super majority needs a super
This is
majority.
appropriate. Yes.
Yes. So it's the way. So the Florida story for today that Jen and I were going to bring up was about the Leon County judge that dealt a significant setback to the smart and safe
Yep.
campaign to legalize adult use for the second time. Obviously, Judge John Cooper sided with the state and invalidated roughly 200,000
100,000.
signatures
Yep.
that were gathered as part of the group's second attempt at qualifying recreational cannabis for amendment for the ballot. The ruling prompted conflicting interpretations, though, about the initiative's path forward, saying like some outlets were claiming that the 200,000 signatures put them in a very unfavorable position to move forward. And I think those were strategic comments. But I've also heard outlets that were saying that the February 1st deadline will still be met because they had submitted more than 1 million signatures, expecting some tomfoolery or some fuckery to happen. And that they have not jeopardized their chance of making the ballot. If anything, the fact that they are not going to appeal the decision made by the judge is pretty telling that it's a good indication they are confident in where they stand right now with the signatures and the deadline that's fast approaching on February 1st. And despite the setback, the decision underscores the complicated and closely watched effort to bring adult use marijuana back to the Florida voters. So many hurdles, so many setbacks for Smart and Safe. And the fact that they're not going to appeal it is pretty telling, because that's a big hit, you would think, 200,000 signatures being invalidated.
For sure. And actually, the article I read when that was released, I think the day before yesterday, didn't speak to the fact that they were not going to appeal it. And it talked about the setback that it could prevent adult use from being on the 2026 ballot. So I love that the additional news that you were able to source does speak to it shouldn't have an impact on that. Because let's be honest, we all want to see adult use on the ballot again to move the conversation forward and to access to the plant, access to medicine. I mean, let's not step over all the tourists that come to the state of Florida that, can't travel or access medicine once they're here, or reciprocity from a medical perspective across state lines. And there's movement in that as well. We're talking a lot about reciprocity. We did spoke a lot about that when we were in Tallahassee last week, actually. So there's movement there and movement towards getting adult use on the ballot. So I love that. There's been a lot of controversy over how Smart and Safe access those signatures and the validity of them. You see the people on the corner collecting signatures and you wonder, like, where is that going and how is that going to be validated and verified as legitimate? So all of that to say, I'm glad that there are still signatures that they are getting on a daily and that they're well positioned from a quantity perspective, that it won't have an impact.
Well, I think we've reported on a few different previous episodes of Elevated Intel, how petition gatherers from the first attempt at Amendment 3 passage, which did not pass last year in November, they were starting to hold them accountable for signatures that they had acquired and submitted that were from people that were not alive, or they were not actually signing the document. They were names that were forged.
Fraudulent, yeah.
And so people were there. I think there were at least 3 petition gatherers from the first attempt that they, after the fact, are now being held accountable for the way that they gathered petitions. Right. But this second attempt for Smart and Safe has had so many setbacks with not so much the process of gathering signatures, but like Governor DeSantis throwing in who can gather the signatures, making the requirements for them to be Florida residents, and then also invalidating that 200,000 because of the fact that the ballot, the full text of the language wasn't present, and then saying that the text that was added, which was a link to the full language, was changing the layout and it wasn't approved. So everything has been thrown at this group. And although I'm going to be honest with you, Jen, although Smart and Safe, the first attempt, it wasn't perfect, but the second attempt is not going to be perfect. You can't make a perfect ballot initiative and spend this kind of money. But with all of the people throwing all this nonsense, Cord Bird stalling the process to get to Supreme Court review, along with Michelle, whatever the hell her name was, from the supervisor of elections, and the fact that James Ethmeyer is also throwing everything, and the governor. You have all these big players that are all kind of tied together, just throwing everything they got at you. Sure. I'm kind of like rooting for Smart and Safe. It might not be perfect, but at least they're not playing as dirty as all of these GOP like leaders in Florida, which is incredibly embarrassing for Florida to see how much work they're going through to stall this.
Great point.
And then flipping the bill for the Fabrizio and Lee like poll that they gathered, and it was very, very plain, very simple. And it said, do you think you should have the ability to vote for recreational adult use cannabis legalization? Or should it be left to lawmakers? And 85 or 89% of Florida voters were like, no, I want to make my own freaking decisions.
Yep.
Lawmakers don't know how to make decisions in my best interest. And this is a very good example. So I'm really actually rooting for the Smart and Safe group, just as an FU to all of these people giving them so much shit, because it's hard, it's expensive. They've spent the money, and I know they've had some financial help, but like, come on, 2 times, nobody has that kind of like long money. And then to feel like everybody is going to be using everything in their arsenal against you, invalidating successfully all of these signatures, and then they don't fight it because they're like, you know what, we prepared better. We have more than enough signatures. We take 200,000, we have 1 million.
Haha, joke's on you.
Cord bird gets the bird. Like, that's how I feel like it is. Just walk away, mic drop, something like that. So like, I would love for legalization to happen in a different way, but I'm rooting for them now. Now I'm like, what can I do? Let's light it on fire and dance.
Thank you for sharing that perspective, because I think we all had some biases around the organization after the last attempt, maybe who they were backed by or their efforts or whatever. But you helped kind of shift my perspective, and just how you just shared the resilience, and who doesn't like to root for the underdog sometimes, right? And I really hope that our listeners as well their eyes will be opened a little bit more, pro Smart and Safe, and maybe give a little bit more effort and attention to the work that they are doing, because they've been knocked down multiple times over. So much that has been positioned against them.
And it's dirty. It's dirty. Yeah. Like the governor last time coming on in the 11th hour and saying, hey, everybody, they don't have home grow. Hey, everybody, they're not going to let you do this or that. And then everyone gets excited because they're not familiar with the one topic requirement. And then I think it affected the voting public because it changed their perspective on who and what was behind the initiative. But now everything's been addressed. The governor's not going to have the ability to go and say, oh, they forgot to do this and that. We know who's sponsoring it. We know what their motives are. Like, and every move has been pretty dirty from our cabinet leadership. And so it's making them look pretty bad and making Smart and Safe look better by default. And so I really hope that we pass this out. I want to spite pass this. Yeah.
We've got it to the red zone so many times now, right? So we definitely need to run that ball into the end zone and get that touchdown and get that win, which I think we are well positioned. And we just need to continue to support the initiative, support the conversation, give our attention to Smart and Safe, the petition, the signatures. And correct me if I'm wrong, Cynthia, the in-person signatures, the ones that need to be physically turned in, that is no longer a requirement. Is that correct? Remember, this was prior to these signatures. There was a requirement that we actually needed to go and turn in our signature or turn in our.
Oh, they were talking about doing that, but
to the supervisor of election. Okay.
Yeah, no, because it's unreasonable to think that if you wanted to get the ballot initiative on the ballot, that anybody who is going to be in favor of it, because we have no other outlets, like other markets like California especially have multiple outlets to change the law, and our lawmakers aren't doing it for us. So we only have this way, and this is a very expensive, very, very expensive way of doing it, but someone's flipping the bill. And then the first thing was like, because you mailed people directly to their homes, the ballot, we're going to put a moratorium or cease and desist in place. The moratorium that came from that was actually finished at the end of September. And so all these supervisor of elections are having to process these signatures and these petitions as fast as possible to get them counted before the February 1st deadline. So if anything, what those people were doing, the hurdles they put in place, just made it more difficult for the individual supervisor of elections to be able to process them. They put the pressure on them now that the moratorium's done to be like, okay, like now we need you to get all these signatures, because it, like, you could throw more crap at it, but we're getting over each hurdle and we're moving forward. So just do your things. Stalling this from going to Supreme Court review was immature and completely embarrassing, in my opinion. Like these are people that have been elected. These are people that have been respected in some capacity, maybe not so much anymore. They went to college. They have good families. They grew up with, good morals, and they're acting ridiculous. Like they're embarrassing themselves by saying, okay, well, now we're going to throw this over your way. And they're making it very clear that if we want to change the Constitution, they will make our lives a living hell if we think that we have the right to do so. And that's really, really troubling to think about, because we've only really asked, well, maybe not just all of us. I'm saying cannabis has only asked mom and dad, for a few things. We don't ask for a lot, and they are making it seem like our attempt to change the Constitution is completely unfounded, unrealistic, and just too far. And that makes us feel little, and we're not.
Isn't that crazy? No, we are loud. We are, we are not to be, we're a force to be reckoned with. And the more education, again, to my earlier point, the more we can have normalizing conversations about this will help to continue to destigmatize the fight that we're up against.
Right. And it's midterm. So like this,
let's not forget.
This is a great time if you want to challenge us, if you want to make these hurdles more apparent, you want to make this more difficult, and nobody goes to bat for us, well, then put someone else there that will. Because we may not have a lot of outlets to get the Constitution changed with individual believies and things that we want to do. I mean, this is affecting other ballot initiatives, but I don't think as strongly as Smart and Safe has been affected. But people, I think, have dropped out of the fight, and they're thinking maybe it's just not worth it in Florida. And that's making me upset, because if we don't have people that are arguing on our behalf, then we have absolutely no way of doing anything about stuff that's unfair or just we don't enjoy. And lawmakers, so replace the people that don't like the things that you like.
Right.
Yes. We'll make this very elementary. Yes.
As, one of our, I don't know if Josephine's a founding member, right? But one of our, your vote is your voice, right? So make it count. That sounds so cliche, but that's what we need to do, right? Be in action and show up and be an advocate, right? For what you believe.
We did say a couple episodes back, don't go to Tallahassee without a weapon, but that sounded kind of like a bad advice. But then I was like, actually, no, I'm going to stick with it. You always need to go armed to Tallahassee, because your weapon is your voice and your opinion and your stance and your belief in whatever it is you're advocating for. Because if you go unarmed, you will get pummeled and run over. So whatever you are arguing to these lawmakers, be well educated, be well informed, do your homework, put the work in, know who you're talking to, definitely know your audience, and speak eloquently to the point, and don't stop speaking until they tell you to leave the office, kind of thing, because you're really going to learn a lot about lawmakers out in Tallahassee by how quickly they want you out of their office.
I tell you a wonderful story, exactly how that relates to what you just shared, because it's so true. I had the fortunate pleasure of being in Tallahassee last week with our Tampa Bay region, right? Our Ambassador Week, which is just, I'm so excited about what these 5 or 6 weeks will produce when it's time for Cannabis at the Capitol. So for those of you that are familiar with Cannabis at the Capitol and haven't registered, please join us. January 14th, 15th, and 16th. I think those would encompass all the dates. That Thursday is actually the event at the Capitol.
Yeah, and, 14 and 15 for sure. And then I think 16 might be like
travel day.
Invite only brunch if we like.
Oh, okay. All right. Yes. So Cannabis at the Capitol, and we are there every year, and we're the voice, right? And my senator, Senator Nick DeSegli, he is in St. Petersburg, and I know that he is the committee chair for the Tourism and Commerce Committee, right? And so I grew up in the tourism industry. I know how important tourism is to the state of Florida. I also know how, the percentage of tourists that are likely to consume cannabis or you need it for medical reasons. But I also know that he is not the biggest fan of cannabis. So
Hmm.
I made sure that I attended that committee last week, the Tourism and Commerce Committee, front and center, right there. And I knew I wanted to go up and introduce myself. I had met with his aide last time I was in Tallahassee, did not have the opportunity to meet him in person. So I went up and I introduced myself after the committee, and I just led in with my experience in tourism, right? I knew that
Hmm.
that was going to build that rapport with him. I knew I was going to be able to plant that seed from a tourism and commerce perspective. And now I'm going to let the cat out of the bag in case he ends up seeing this. But I'm not then going to circle back with the cannabis conversation. So
Yeah.
I knew my audience. I knew how I was going to be received if I led with cannabis. So I definitely was going to look for a different avenue to make an
Oh yeah.
impact in building that relationship and that rapport with my senator. And going on a going in on a like-minded topic, one that he's the head of that committee for, is going to better position me to be able to have those conversations and hopefully broaden his perspective and
Hmm.
understanding about the plant and about the medicine and how it can be a complement to his initiatives around tourism and commerce in our state. So going in with that, going in armed,
Yeah.
going in with that, what is the term I'm looking for? That arbitrary, that fictitious weapon. It's not coming to me now, but going in knowing
Sorry,
how
I'm
you're
just
going,
gonna say random words until you.
right,
So
till
yeah,
it
you
sticks,
have an
right?
arsenal of things that you know he cares about, and
Right.
yeah, don't lead with cannabis if they're not canna friendly.
Yeah, I
'Cause
mean,
it's gonna be
it
a
probably didn't
rough.
help that I had my cannabis medallion on and my earring and my lapel, but regardless,
He knew.
he totes
He
knew. He
probably knew.
totes
Yeah.
knew. He saw who I was sitting with. But also, I'm presenting from a different position, right? I am bringing some of my expertise, like I talked about in the earlier of the call, right? I am utilizing and leveraging my expertise and my experience to have my niche in the industry. Same with my senators and my representatives, right? I'm leveraging my experience and my professionalism and how I can have these conversations. So I am going in armed. I know who
Mhm.
I'm going to engage with, how I'm going to engage. And just like for my customers, no is not an answer for them, and no is not an answer for engaging with the people, the lawmakers and the legislature that are going to make or break with their vote on important bills that are going to impact the state of Florida.
Right.
So I'm so grateful for that opportunity. I'm going to definitely be having conversations with him prior to going back up for CAC, meeting him here local at the local office before session starts in January. And, the time is of the essence, but having that opportunity and having Florida Cannabis Action Network be the vehicle that gives me access to those lawmakers is just, I don't know how else I would have had the opportunity to feel comfortable,
Hmm.
knowledgeable, and have the access if it wasn't for the coaching and the education that FLCAM provided. And then obviously the events such as Ambassador Weeks and Cannabis at the Capitol that gives me and others the opportunity to have those conversations in Tallahassee. Because being in the industry is the in the business of the industry is one thing. But in
Hmm.
Tallahassee, that's where it
Yeah.
happens. That's where the work is done that allows me to do business in this industry.
Right. And it's very difficult to don't expect to turn anybody into a cannabis advocate. Don't expect them to sponsor language and legislation on your behalf because you ask them to. If
Yeah,
anything, it's going to be highly unlikely to get a senator or a House member to all of a sudden take up a cause that it was not their platform, that was
right.
not their, it was not something that their constituents wanted, and then you just change the world. It doesn't work like that. But if you can be polite and patient and find something that they like or love that you also have in common, and they're willing to listen to you and sit in their office, and 5 minutes of permission might turn into 15 minutes.
Mhm.
And you have a way of filling that, however much time they're going to give you continuously. They might sit on a committee that votes on a bill that has been taken up by a senator or house member that loves cannabis, that has
Mhm.
already sponsored language or legislation, that already has their ducks in a row, maybe something about reciprocity or employee protections, family
Mhm.
protections, which we know are going to be, they already have their owner. And we just might need the support and vote of a committee that your person who doesn't like cannabis sits on. And that might just give us a yay instead of a nay, because I
Mhm.
gave you a this and you gave me a that, and I'm from your hometown and I'll hunt you down, and that
Right.
kind of thing. And if you can visit them at their location locally, it's probably even better because that proves without any doubt that yes, you do live in their area, which is something I had a hard time my first cannabis at the Capitol trying to convince Randy Fine that I lived in his area because I
Right.
did. I was right outside of it, but I'd already spoken to everybody else, and he was like, I was like, why don't we just round out this Brevard County this trip? And then yeah, he was not in favor, but now he kind of is. But I digress. So yes, it's showing up. It's always fun. I always have a great time at Cannabis at the Capitol. I kind of go rogue and just here, there, everywhere. But this year I'm going to try to be stationary. You and I, or not you and I think is it Carla and I or Susie and I will be running the registration table for people, and I will give you all of your swag
Yes.
and make you
Yes.
sign
Yes.
things and maybe make you a name tag or something. I don't know what I have to do, but I'm going to be there.
At
For
the
that.
very least, come party with us, right? We have a welcome reception, which is going to be
Yeah.
a great time. That's the registration event, and that will be at the Wednesday evening at Proof in Tallahassee.
Yep.
And where you can meet us, hang with us, get to know us. And then the next day is the actual work that's going to be done at the Capitol. And listen, if we can't have a Gus with us, right? We either need red bottoms to charge the Capitol. We need our service dog Gus. We need a
We need
veteran.
a dog.
We need a
We have
dog.
a dog.
But you know, it's so much work. But as one of our listeners just stated in the chat, the work and the change really does start locally. So knowing
Yeah.
who your senator is, knowing who your representative
Mhm.
is where that conversation begins and it starts. And so I just had a little buffering there, but that's where it starts. And so taking that to the Capitol and having those conversations be continue is the opportunity. And it's such a profound opportunity and experience. And I would not have that access or know that that's where the work is done had it not been for an organization like Florida Cannabis Action Network, right?
Right.
And so I'm so grateful for that and cannot wait to do CAC with you. And we're a force to be reckoned with. Our voices are being heard. They've seen us these last 4 weeks in Tallahassee, 5 weeks in Tallahassee representing. And so we are definitely moving the needle, and conversations like this, elevated intel, being present, like all of this is moving the needle, and I couldn't be
Right.
more excited to be part of it.
Yeah. And although we said we weren't going to talk about the hemp ban, like if somebody is a hemp retailer and they have a problem with the hemp ban, go to CAC because we'll put you in front of the people that can make the difference or attempt to help you, but we're not going to do it on your behalf if in your absence. Like we have
Mhm.
other things we have to advocate for because we have members that have joined and asked us to help them. And of course we are going to help them. So if you're a non-member, but you're like, hey, tell Tallahassee to like fix all this. Okay. Yeah. No, you have to put the work in. You have to put the time in, wear comfortable shoes, dress appropriately, have your talking points. Don't talk about something ridiculous. I reference back to like the hemp language that was trying to be implemented, which would have banned hemp a couple of years ago, and everybody and their brother provided testimony. It was like, oh, we really should have filtered the freaking testimony. But it gave this year, just join, tell us what you want, and we'll put you in front of the people that can do the things, and you can plead your case, and they'll listen, and we can try as a group, a collective, to get things done. But like, don't just be like, okay, yeah, like go out to Tallahassee and you're FL Can, you care. No, we care, but like you have to put the work in.
Put
So
the
it's
work
fine.
in. You
Yeah.
know, and I'm hoping that like my senator and the ones that are not, informed or educated enough around the cannabis conversation, I'm hoping they have a cousin walk over Christmas.
I really hope that they have all been accidentally dosed with cannabis at their Thanksgiving, in
In the
their
most
30s.
responsible way, of course. But
Ethically responsible way, yes, by a
yes.
loved family member, someone close to you, not randomly, not like a roofie, not like a roofie colada, but if only we could get Tallahassee high, maybe they would understand, but we won't. And I don't
We
want
will
this
not.
premeditation. I've got one more story that I want to talk about because we're gonna wrap up right around the time we normally would, even though we had the delay because we just killed it. Like we were able to pop, 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 pop.
We're amazing.
So I wanted to get your input on the DEA. So the DEA, love them or hate them, they get to request drugs. Okay, all types of different types of drugs, and do research on them. And every year they will request a certain amount of individual drugs for them to do research. And so this year we noticed a little change in the requested amount of psychedelics from the DEA. It's almost like the DEA might be taking them. I don't know. We could hope. But they have proposed substantial increases to federal research quotas for several psychedelics, including psilocybin, DMT, and MDMA. For perspective, the agency requested in 2021, only 35 grams of DMT. This year, they requested 30,000 grams. Okay.
Could you repeat that statistic one more time for me
Yes.
and the listeners?
Yeah. So the DEA in 2021, so we're seeing an increase in psychedelic specific request amounts from the DEA. So 2021, they requested 35 grams of DMT for research purposes. Okay. And this year they requested 30,000 grams. Okay. MDMA, some may know it as ecstasy, but MDMA in a purer form, allocations saw a similar shift where in 2025, they requested 5,200 grams, and this year they requested 30,000 grams. So notably, the DEA did not increase quotas for THC, LSD, ibogaine, and mescaline. While some might interpret this statistic as the fact that THC rescheduling is imminent, and so the need to do research on it is not necessary. That's how I see it. Why would you go and request more of something that is probably going to be easily and readily available shortly if rescheduled? And so as far as like ibogaine and mescaline and LSD, LSD also being something that's used for treatment of PTSD in veterans, and studying it more would be very beneficial. It looks like the psilocybin specific side is going to be where they're kind of focusing their research efforts because they want a lot of it. Yeah. So
I'm so excited.
The sweeping adjustments to underscore the rapidly evolving federal posture towards psychedelic research and the growing anticipation for major regulatory changes ahead. Focus on what you can research and asking for more from mom and dad. Can you grow us some more psilocybin, because we're going to play with it more in such substantial volume? I think is pretty telling. So I thought that's why our title today was more food, too much family, but not enough drugs. So we're going to ask for more drugs, please.
More drugs, please.
Yeah, more drugs, please.
For your own,
for the DEA.
For daddy.
Research.
It's all for research.
I research every day.
So my response to that, is I am so optimistic and excited for what that will, for updates to come, right? Mm-hmm. Because taking a step back and looking at it through my lens, being in the industry has exposed me to so many other conversations around the medicinal benefits of psychedelics, right? The mushroom therapy, how it's helping with CTE and these traumatic brain traumatic brain injuries, yep. And the number of concussions sustained by athletes. And you've been on panel, or you've heard panels, I'm sure, of these former athletes that have spoken about the relief and the healing elements, regenerating properties of these types of drugs that are not available through any other means, right? And it all comes from the earth, right? The mushroom therapy. It's just so fascinating that we are now looking at these other alternatives, and that the DEA is asking for more for research purposes because there is something to be said about it, right? There's more people talking about it. We are exposed to it. Right. The amount of education that I have received from just being in those rooms where those conversations are being had really opens it up to the inquiry of, and the education of, and the research of what more can be done. And we have paved the path with our THC. So thankful that has opened the door. And I think that will allow access to the psychedelics, to be a little bit more of a less resistant of a path
Yeah.
because of what we've done through the THC initiatives.
Oh yeah,
And
I mean, I'm not an expert in the field of psychedelics in any capacity except for personal use. I'm an expert of personal use. There you go. But I do think it's a signal at the momentum of towards broader
yeah,
policy reform. And I didn't really know about the CTE and psychedelics study because I did have a very close friend from high school that was in the NFL and had multiple issues of concussed activities, both in high school and college and in the NFL. And unfortunately, he killed himself after he was released from his position with a team. Because and he was actually they actually submitted him for study and realized how much trauma his brain had. And so in the event that was something that was available to maybe help him transition from, like being in the NFL environment, going back to home and dealing with how your brain is I guess having those transactions and making up for things that are damaged or lost, that would have been invaluable. I mean, but we didn't know. That was like we're talking about like this was 2010, and I think there's a lot of CTE issues that have happened since then with big names and smaller names and unnamed people, where if this is something that really is beneficial or could help with that, then the longer we wait, the worse it's going to get. We need to be on top of this. I'm a huge advocate for psychedelics in any form or fashion that you think is beneficial. That's it. There's
yeah.
really I don't believe it has to be a certain way. I believe whatever you believe it fixes, do the things and fix those things because I think it works for a lot.
I think this should be a topic on Elevated Intel, a future topic, because there's so much more to unpack here. And
Mhm.
I think this also does open the conversation for our military vets, right? Our
Yeah.
veterans that are coming back with PTSD and, that have been involved in accidents overseas or at war. And, whether that's depression, suicidal thoughts, transitioning back into civilian life. So there's so many other aspects that this can be a complement to and an aid to that is just scratching the surface, Cynthia,
Yeah.
scratching the surface. So, we as a society look at these drugs from a recreational perspective,
Right.
and it really is educating people on the shift to let's look at it from a medicinal perspective. How
Mental
can this
health.
change
Yeah.
mental health? And here I'll finish with this. So many more conversations are being had about mental health,
Mhm.
the CTE thing, the mental health, suicide. There are remedies to this that we are not looking at that are right at our fingertips. And so with the DEA looking to increase testing on this psilocybin and on these psychedelics, what will that open up and what conversations can we have from a future state that will help the community that we just referenced, right? The former athletes, our veterans, because there's so much more available than let me just write you a prescription for an antipsychotic or a psychotic
All
drug
right.
that is going to, it's just a cocktail of prescriptions that this is definitely a conversation that we should revisit as we get more information from what the
Right.
findings on the DEA. But this is really exciting. And I'm so glad you shared that because it
I
is
hope
something,
they do like they release like, okay, obviously we asked for more. Like we
yeah,
asked for substantially more. Like this is an increase that is like incredibly different if you look at it on the chart.
yes,
So what did you do with it? What happened because you didn't ask for more of this or that or this.
right,
You just
right.
wanted more of these fun things. And I know MDMA has been used for couples therapy, which I think is incredibly that tracks big time. I'm
Yes.
like, absolutely. People, I mean, if you save your marriage by taking some MDMA and you find a way to reconnect, by all means, it's better than whatever the alternative might have been if it wasn't medication or divorce, or whatever.
Sure.
But veterans having the option to use alternative therapies as a way of just coping with all of the shit they
Mm.
went through defending our country and protecting you and me from all the nasty shit out there. Give them whatever they need. If it's this, give it to them. And if you need to do the research, then tell us what came out of the research. Because I mean, obviously something sparked your interest. It's already interested us, but we're biased because we've been advocating and the veterans group have been advocating for alternative therapies. But tell us what you found.
Oh, I can't wait.
Share with the group, the family. We'd love to, but yeah, I don't know if they will, but we can write a letter.
Yeah.
Hey, dear DEA, this is Cynthia. Please share.
Please share.
Please share.
And let me know if you want me to be a case study. I'll be happy.
Can I please volunteer? I would like to be voluntold to take some drugs with you. So I don't think that we would respond, but there's always worth a try. I mean, for Christmas, I can ask. But that was a wonderful show. And I'm so glad that you were able to join me. And Jodi, I think she'll forgive us for our tardiness because we made up for it with vigor and a lot of alliteration and appropriate words. And I only cussed like twice.
I did pick up on that. And listen, as our elevated intel goes to Spotify and all these other channels, you got to watch the language.
Hashtag trying. And
You're near perfect in my heart and mind and my eyes. So it's okay with me.
I'm just going to put a disclaimer at the bottom that just rolls around and says, like, please just don't put it on when kids are in the car. Like, I shouldn't even be on speakerphone most of the time. Let's be honest. Okay.
I'm here for it.
Scrolling. So I appreciate you joining me, Jen.
Oh, my pleasure.
So much for everything that you do. Have fun in Vegas, but not too much fun. But take all of the swag if it's not nailed down. Mama wants some free stuff because I won't be
ship it right to you, babe.
Ship it right to my house. Just take everything that's not nailed down. All right.
We'll
talk to you next week on Elevated Intel. This is Cynthia Brewer signing off, and my wonderful co-host J-Mack, Jen Makris from Cannabis Cash Consultants, the Cannabis Banking Queen. Yep. Thanks again for listening. We'll talk to you next week.
Bye, all.